Well, hello everybody. I'm sitting here with Mallory Burggraaf, and she's my new neighbor now that I'm in Vanessa and I are in Boulder, Colorado, and Mallory is nearby, and she agreed to sit down and talk about some of the work she's offering through Redbeard. So hey, thanks, Mallory, for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and so glad for us to be able to connect in this way.
Awesome. Yeah. So, Mel, just briefly, can you just share kind of who you are and what your background is, and what you're offering through Redbeard, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I am Mallory. Hello, and I am an independent contractor with Redbeard Somatic Therapy. I'm located in Denver, Colorado, but most of my work with folks is actually virtually, so meeting with folks via Zoom for telehealth. And yeah, there's really three main modalities that I kind of bring to the table in my work with folks, and that is somatic experiencing, dynamic attachment repatterning experience, DARE, which we're going to talk some more about, and internal family systems. So all three of those I tend to bring into my work with clients in the container of somatic coaching.
All right, awesome. Well, what we decided to focus on this month was this attachment work, or DARE is the acronym. Can you repeat what DARE stands for, and then just kind of just a little bit, what it is, sort of, who teaches it and what it's about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is a long acronym. DARE stands for Dynamic Attachment Repatterning Experience. And it is taught by Diane Poole-Heller, who also has been a teacher in the somatic experiencing world. So it's kind of similar to somatic experiencing, but a bit of a branch off of, if you will. And so, yeah, to kind of give a brief description of the modality, I really think of it as it is still a body-based treatment and somatically focused. And really, what it's adding in is bringing in this relational lens. So, similarly to how somatic experiencing has a bit of that somatic focus, body based focus, we might be talking about the nervous system and different nervous system patterns. With DARE, we're bringing in this relational lens. So, talking about relationships, the ways that we're relating to ourselves internally, and the ways that we're relating with other people in our environment, and ways to be able to connect to ourselves and others, and really deepen those relationships and be able to move towards secure attachment ultimately.
Okay, awesome. That's very succinctly stated. I like that. Um, what drew you specifically to this work? I assume you started with SE training and then maybe wanted to kind of focus in this way, or what brought you there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did my somatic experiencing training with Allison Hallquist in Boulder, and she is a trainer for the DARE modality. And so, yeah, in my working with her and training with her, there would be times where she kind of was talking about the relational piece or bringing a little bit of that in. And there was a few different times individually where I would go and talk with Allison of, hey, I'm really interested in that piece that you shared about the relationship aspect, and she would share with me of, okay, so this is actually a little bit less somatic experiencing and a little bit more of DARE. And so then that was when I was like, what's DARE? And she started kind of telling me a little bit about it. And I found out about the training and decided to then pursue the training in DARE. And I mean, besides sort of that context, what also drew me was I kind of consider myself a very relational practitioner. I'm always kind of thinking about how we are in relationship with things. And so when I found out about DARE and started doing the training in it, there was something that just for me personally felt so resonant and really made sense. It just made so much sense to me of a way to kind of bring that lens into the therapy space as a way of understanding ourselves and the way that we're interacting with the world.
Cool. So when you're using DARE, is it like totally separate than a somatic experiencing session, or is it more like those two modalities come together, or how are you using that with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I very much use a blend of both. And what that means or how that might look is that, we'll be doing somatic experiencing work. and maybe checking in with what's happening at that nervous system level. And then I might bring in that relational lens, right? So how the person is in relationship with themselves, or if we're processing something, most likely there was some sort of relationship happening with somebody there with them. And so just bringing in attention to and awareness of the relational aspects as we're kind of reprocessing or renegotiating some of those traumatic pieces. So I think they can be blended very beautifully together. It kind of is just another layer of healing that gets to happen. But I certainly have folks where we're mostly focusing on, like, say they're really interested in attachment styles and wanting to learn more about that and the way that they're in relationship. We certainly can focus on it just by itself too.
Got it. Yeah. So, I wonder, to keep talking about this relational lens and like, I
Yeah.
kind of know what you mean. I know what you mean, and I think we mostly know what you mean, but I wonder if you could kind of give some specific examples of like the kinds of clients or the types of situations where looking at things from a relational perspective or from an attachment perspective, is where the work can really be valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so glad that you asked that too, because yeah, there's, I think sort of this piece of relationship is always happening. We're always in relationship with ourselves and what's going on around us. And really, what I mean by this relational lens is that we are bringing awareness to the fact that that's happening and being able to bring intentionality with that. Right. So, for example, what that might look like if I'm bringing Dare into a session with someone, like, say, you and me were connecting, something that I might say in terms of like bringing in that relational lens, right, would be, and in this moment, maybe just noticing how I'm sitting here with you and really interested in what you have to say, right? So we know there's a relationship happening. You and me are talking, we're having this conversation, but it's
Mhm.
really bringing awareness to being intentional about, and I'm right here with you. And how is it to notice that I'm right here with you? You're not alone as you're sharing this material, right?
And so like do people have like to when you bring attention to that, hey, right now you and I are in a relationship. What's that like? Um, are there like some like what are some of the variety like for like what would people look for or feel when you're using the coaching as the example of the relationship, if that question makes sense.
I think so. Like, what are some common things that they might notice? Is that what the
I,
question is?
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. And I think, it's sort of that thing too of when we're doing somatic experiencing, we're getting to know this nervous system that's in front of us, right? So, kind of similarly, like in me saying something like that, of bringing attention to you and I being in relationship, we're going to learn a lot about their attachment system, right? So, some folks, when I bring attention to that, there might be the experience of, oh, wow, that's really comforting. I'm not just talking to dead air. Like, yeah, you're here with me. And I do feel like you're listening, and that feels comforting, or that feels nourishing. Or somatically, I might notice that I was tense and now I feel less tense, or
Mm.
there might be a softening that's happening. And for others, there might be this experience of, oh, that's kind of overwhelming to notice that somebody's here with me because maybe I'm so used to being alone. Right. And so
Mm.
that is all such helpful information for us to start to get to know their attachment system and how it's playing out in relationship with other people.
I see. And so, like, what would be like for people who would be interested in exploring attachment work or this model? Like, do they
Yeah.
need to know what they're, many people kind of know about the, secure attachment is what we all would hope we would have, that we'd wish everybody would
Sure.
have secure, but then we might have disorganized attachment or ambivalent attachment or anxious attachment. Some people have a little bit of familiarity with those attachment styles. Do people need to kind of like know in advance sort of what is that important coming into the work, or how does that work?
Totally. Yeah. I would say most of the folks that I work with that are interested in DARE, or, we sort of talk about that in that first consultation call, is often a result of them knowing their attachment style, or they've kind of started looking into that, or they've read some books and they're like, what is this world of attachment? Right. And so I think a lot of times when I'm first connecting with somebody, their interest in DARE might be because they have, learned about attachment styles and want to understand it more. So certainly that can be a beautiful combination of, okay, I have this framework, I'm understanding that attachment styles are a thing, and now I want to explore mine and the way that it
Mm,
plays out.
mm,
But it's certainly not a requirement. I also have a lot of folks who are coming in specifically, for us to process and heal around relational trauma or developmental trauma. But there doesn't have to be sort of this awareness of attachment styles or even using that as a framework for understanding. We're working with what's showing up in the room relationally.
I see. And so, like, is this work? Is it only about healing relational ruptures, like from the past, like maybe with parents or caregivers, or losses or lack of support, or that kind of developmental history and trauma, or is it also something that can be used with kind of present tense relationships as adults, with loved ones, with friends? I mean, is it both and, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, yeah, I would absolutely say it's a both and that's something that I personally really like about the modality is there's so many different areas we can explore with it. And so certainly there's some folks where we might be doing some processing around the past and relational trauma from the past. And then also where in the present is secure getting to happen or safety in relationships getting to happen and holding how that can be reparative alongside the processing things in the past that were traumatizing or overwhelming. And so that's certainly an area that we might tend to or hang out with. But also, yeah, I certainly have folks where it's in this present day. These are the relationships that I'm navigating. I have a few that I've identified that I feel secure in, and there's a few that are feeling really challenging. And so having support with how do I in this present day kind of help work through some of these relational pieces. Yeah.
Got it. It seems like, I wonder, as someone who, well, I know more about being in relationships today than I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I wonder if is this a modality that some people utilize to help them understand who they are in relationship, how they are in relationship, what makes their real, and right now I'm talking about kind of like romantic or partnership, that
Yeah.
kind of relationship. Is
Yeah.
that a theme that you would frequently explore with folks?
Absolutely, definitely. And I would say, not always, but often there can be sort of this experience too of I feel totally fine in my friendships, but my romantic partnership is where all of my stuff comes up, right? And so, I think so very often, yeah, that can be an area of focus and also an area of support, right? Of just how can we bring more support to this system so that there can start to be this experience of safety and trust and feeling connected to where oftentimes when someone's coming in there's sort of this experience of I'm feeling really overwhelmed in the relationship, or kind of these different attachment adaptations playing out, right?
Got yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The one other thing just popped into my mind. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. It makes me wonder, to me, a common form of, most of us have anxiety, of different kinds. To me, one pretty, common kind of anxiety is, social kinds of anxiety. You're feeling, maybe safe in some settings, but awkward in groups, or things like that. Is
yeah.
that, when you're thinking about a relational lens, does that ever do you work with that as a situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say that's certainly something that, can show up in the therapeutic space and something for us to process and kind of navigate with each other. And, I would say to have a little bit more of a sense of kind of my style. Also, I'm usually when I'm working with folks holding the both and of how we're in relationship with ourself internally and also what's happening kind of on the outside with other people. And so, with that sort of scenario that you're describing of like anxiety showing up in social situations, some of what we might be talking about or working with is being in tune with myself and what my needs are, right? Like just even being able to identify that and have an
Mm,
understanding for that so that when I'm around other people or maybe in a social setting that I know might make me feel anxious, what are some of the things that I could have for support before, when I'm at this, and after, knowing that this is something that might bring me some anxiety, and also exploring just sort of like what they're wanting in that space and how to help support around it too. So it's not just a, I'm either going to go and endure it and it's terrible, or I'm not going to go at all, right? Like having support to be able to be in that gray.
Got it. Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, excellent. Anything that you feel like we haven't touched upon, about it, or anything else you'd want to say before we close?
Yeah, I think I'm just really grateful that this modality exists. It's one that I personally just really, as I kind of mentioned, I see myself as a relational practitioner. So I'm kind of always just thinking about how we just are in relationship with everything. And one thing that I really love about this modality is it's another possible access point or another possible avenue for us to be able to connect with agency, choice, empowerment, and just being able to know ourselves more and what we're needing, and be able to know what we need in relationship, and how do we get those needs met relationally. And so I just feel really passionate about it. It's such a cool way of being able to understand ourselves more, and understand how we are in relationship, and move towards a place that feels really empowered around it. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, your enthusiasm for the relational container comes across even in our conversation here. So